Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. Today's clip is part one of a four-part interview we did with John Jorgenson. Now, some of you may know John Jorgenson from the Desert Rose Band. Some of you may know him from playing like Django Reinhardt. Some of you may know him from playing with Elton John and a lot of the Byrds for many things. Today, we're going to talk about how he got started. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, multi-talented John Jorgenson. Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with John Jorgenson. John, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So I'm just going to jump right to it. We usually ask people, how'd you get started? But I know that you are from a musical family.
I am. My mom is 92 and she still plays piano in church sometimes. My dad was a conductor. So around our house there was just music all the time. You know, it was just normal. And as a kid, I saw my mom giving piano lessons to other kids. So to me, you know, that's just what kids do. Mm-hmm. And she was giving attention to them, and I was like, I want attention. So I have an older sister, and when she started practicing the piano, then I would listen to her, and when she was done, I would then go figure out what she had played by ear. So I was about 4, I guess, and my mom decided, okay, I'll start him, but I'll put him in a different book so that he doesn't already know what the songs sound like.
Right.
And he'll also learn how to read music.
Right.
So
because you would cheat if you could memorize it, right?
Of course, you know, and it was kind of fun, you know. I liked it, and then I started figuring out like theme songs to TV shows that I like F Troop or Batman or whatever, Addams Family, and then I started playing the clarinet when I was about 8. You know, in those days they still had a lot of music in schools, and again, my sister being 2 years older, she was in 5th grade where you can choose a band instrument. So she chose the flute. I chose the clarinet because I didn't want to be outdone by her playing 2 instruments. So then I guess when I was about 10 at school, there was a kid that came and played ukulele and sang This Land Is Your Land for show and tell. I thought, that's pretty cool. You can carry that thing around. You could sing with it. And at the same time I started listening to radio, you know, rock music on the radio, and loved the sound of the guitar. So I started begging my parents for a guitar, and they didn't like that idea so much because they thought, he's already practicing the piano, he's practicing the clarinet, you know, he's got to have time to be a kid.
All right.
You know, and plus they thought the guitar was not a serious instrument.
Right.
And that it would be like a phase, that I'd get over it. But I didn't. I mean, I was like determined.
So did they teach you how to play guitar? Did they know, or did?
No, they didn't know. They didn't know anything about the guitar. But it took about 2 years of, you know, kind of begging.
Did you take lessons?
I did. I finally, you know, I was borrowing people's guitars to try to learn how to play. So they figured, okay, he's serious.
Right.
And then for Christmas, I got my first guitar, electric guitar.
What was it?
It was a St. George, which was a Japanese, kind of like a Jaguar. Yeah. And there was a store in Hollywood that imported them and sold them.
So you had moved from Wisconsin to Hollywood by then?
California. Yeah. We moved there when I was 1. So even though I was born in Wisconsin, I'm basically a Californian. Yeah. And so that guitar, you know, I started listening to records of the Guess Who, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Buffalo Springfield, Byrds, anything I could learn, you know, by ear. And that summer, there was free guitar lessons at the community college in San Bernardino, which is kind of the next big town to Redlands. And I went in there with my guitar and little amp, you know, and the instructor says, okay, no electric guitars allowed. And I was like heartbroken. You know, I came out to my mom waiting in the car, and she said, they won't let me come back. I can't you know, I have to have an acoustic guitar. So, as an early birthday present, my parents bought me a Yamaha FG 180 acoustic, which was actually a pretty darn good guitar,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I was going to ask you, what was the name of the electric one again?
St. George.
Was the action tremendously high on it?
It wasn't terrible, you know. It was, my dad took me to this little guitar shop in Redlands called House of Note.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was going to buy he wasn't going to buy a new guitar, you know, he was going to buy a used guitar. And my whole thing was it has to be easy to play, because the ones I'd been borrowing were like terrible. You know,
Yeah,
I tried
right.
to put socks over my hands and
Oh,
all
yeah,
that stuff,
yeah.
you know. So the first, I remember they let me try a white Telecaster. I didn't know what a Telecaster was, but I remember it was a Fender and it was white and it was that shape, you know, and I think it was $75. This would have been 1968. So it was probably a 3 or 4 year old guitar,
Yeah.
you know. And I was like, yeah, Dad, this is pretty easy to play. And he's like, well, what do you have that's less than that?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And so they showed me this St. George, which wasn't quite as easy as the Fender, but it still was okay.
I have to ask, you still have it?
No,
Well, see, you would have traded the Fender too probably then, so don't have to grieve about it too bad.
no. Well, what I did was, okay, so it didn't look like any of the guitars the Beatles had.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So I got a Hofner guitar pretty soon, you know, not too long after that. I got to go to Europe in 1970 playing in my father's University Wind Ensemble. And I was 14, I think. And I knew Hofners were made in Germany. So if I was in Holland, that was pretty close. They're probably going to be cheaper there than in America.
Right, yeah.
So I was able to buy one for, I think, $120. So now I was going to customize my St. George to make it look like a Rickenbacker.
Yeah.
I did a good job on the headstock, but when it came time to the body, I just ruined it and it went in the trash.
Yeah. So what was your first good electric guitar?
Well, I would say the Hofner was good.
So it was not a bass. I mean, it was
It was a guitar, yeah.
a presidential or something like that.
It didn't have a name like that. It just had a number, I think, like 4572, and it looked like a Gibson 330. You know, so
Yeah.
fully hollow,
Yeah.
2 cutaways, and good pickups. You know, it sounded and played good. Of course, I tried to customize it too. I put a Gibson pickup on it,
Well,
which sounded about the same as the Hofner pickup.
yeah.
But so that was like I said, I was 14, and then, you know, I kept all the bands that I was seeing usually had Les Pauls. You know, everybody had pretty much most people had Gibsons at that point, you know. And so I went into the music shop and I saw this SG, but it said Les Paul on the top.
Yeah.
And I went, well, this is kind of cool. I've seen Carlos Santana play one of these,
Right.
but it also says Les Paul, so it's kind of like two, you know, both at the same time. And somebody that had bought that originally at that store had just traded it in on something. So it was a 1961 SG Les Paul, and I think it was $275. So I paid for it on time, you know, $27.50 a month for a year.
Yeah.
And when I got to $275, I thought, I'm done. My mom was like, no, there's this thing called interest. You got to pay these last 2 payments. And so both the Hofner and that one I still have.
Well, that's great.
And it survived the flood.
Yeah.
Here it was at sound check.
It was at soundcheck, really.
You know, in one
were
of
not so
those
lucky.
vaults, you know, that
Yeah.
full of it was from the vault was I got from touring with Elton John.
Yeah.
So it was there with all, you know, I don't know, 8 or 9 other guitars, and so you can see the water must have been like this high, you know, because you can see from the neck up it's completely fine.
Yeah.
And as it goes down, it's not bad until you get right in the bottom.
Yeah.
And the water would have sat there and.
We had a number of items in there that, you know, luckily the Hendrix guitar I had the case was so sealed that it just got a little moisture in it, a little bit of rust on the pick guard screws, and that was it.
Wow.
So
That
was
is so.
lucky.
I remember you had a lot of
Yeah.
a lot
Well, I
of.
didn't want to tell people where they were at when they gave us 7 days to exit our original building when they took it, by eminent domain.
Right.
And so, and they were pushing every building down around us, to build the convention center.
Yeah.
And we had to go somewhere, and so that was where we went with a lot of the stuff. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, some of it got damaged.
Yeah. Well, I was in Europe at that time, touring. By that time, I was touring with my Gypsy Jazz Quintet.
Right.
I'd called my wife. She said the basement is full.
Yeah.
I said, well, you got to get I have all my amps and stuff down there. You got to get it. She said, I can't even go down there. There's live power, and it's. She said, that Marshall cabinet you have? I said, yeah. She said, it's floating.
Oh
I
man.
was like, oh no. So I think I called my guy at Soundcheck at the time. I said, can you go to my house and help get stuff out of the basement? And he said, we can't get to our trucks.
Yeah.
I went,
Yeah.
okay.
It was. It started raining Friday. They had the Jimmy Buffett concert. It started raining, and it was the next Saturday before we could get into Soundcheck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was devastating. I heard so many, not just, like, basically every Luthier I talked to said that the clients of the guitars that they fixed from the flood, the acoustically, sounded better than they did beforehand, and they were all like, what is it about oil, snakes, sewage, and that makes a guitar sound better,
Well, I did an album actually called Gifts from the Flood, because so many of my guitars, I was so happy to get them back,
Yeah.
and they inspired me to write music. And so basically on this album, all the guitars and amps and pedals and stuff were all things that survived from the flood. And
That's real cool.
one of them was a G&L A-Sat guitar. It wasn't even one of my favorites to begin with, but when I got it back, I'm like, wow, Joe, why does this sound so much better? And he said, my theory is that people love the sound of pickups from the 50s.
Yeah.
Because they start to degrade.
Yeah.
In odd ways.
Right.
And they become more unique sounding because of all this degradation. He said, I tried many different ways to speed up that degradation process with new things. Put it in the freezer, do all these other things. So I never quite got it, but I thought that was the deal. He said, well, this pickup was sitting, in diesel fuel and snakes and sewage and all this stuff. So it would artificially age that pickup.
Yeah.
So if it still worked, when you got it back all together, it's going to sound different.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to like that difference, maybe you're not, but it's going to do something. I thought
Bill Carson told me did you know who Bill was?
Yeah.
He said that they started making this Fender Texas Special pickup because they found out that all it was that the magnets were weaker than they had been, and that was the secret to it.
And people loved, people like that. Well, yeah.
So I want to jump back though. So you went to Europe with your dad. When did you start? When did you have your first band yourself?
Well,
and what?
Yeah,
what
probably,
kind of music did you play?
Well, my friends up up the street had a garage band, and they already had 2 or 3 guitars and drums, so they needed a bass. So that was my next thing I asked for Christmas. Can I get a bass? So my parents got me a very cheap, kind of a Hofner copy, made by Audition, and so I played bass with them, and then it was music like like Beatles, Santana, Creedence, The Who, Grand Funk Railroad was big with us, Free, all kind of stuff that garage bands of the day could play.
Yeah.
And then I also was involved at the university where my dad worked, and so I started playing with some guys from the university that were quite a bit older than me, and I was playing guitar and was using my Hofner guitar, and so that really kind of pushed me, I think, because I was playing with people that were so much older, and I didn't want to be looked at, as the kid. So I was really lucky. And same thing, we were playing like Stones and Jay Giles Band and Billy Preston and Santana. And
so now you just had we're filming this in July, and you just had a birthday, right?
Yep.
And you're born in 54.
56.
56. Okay.
Yeah.
It's me that was born in 54.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, but I have a birthday this month too. I was thinking, I was thinking we were the same age, but
I'm just a
you're a child.
younger. Yeah. Yeah.
So we were listening to the same music though. That's
Sure.
pretty much the same.
Yeah. I loved all, of course, Hendrix and Zeppelin and the Beatles, and Yes, when I discovered that, that was pretty cool, because I was also a classical musician. I was still, studying clarinet and bassoon and saxophone.
Were you able to take your knowledge from playing woodwind instruments and whatever else that you played, and could you roll that into guitar? That
Yeah,
knowledge?
I think so, because, reading the music, that was the same. No, the notes are the same, whatever instrument you play on, and dynamics are the same, and tempo and tuning, and all of that. I think it all really helped me. It's not directly technical for the guitar, but I think for every instrument, the music is more important than the technical aspect, and I was very lucky, I think, because I was, so much music was coming at me all the time,
So, when did you get into Django? What age?
That was, so in studying the older styles of Dixieland and stuff like that, I learned about Eddie Lang and Joe Venuti and Carl Kress and Dick McDonough and Charlie Christian, and all these guys were great, but I thought there's got to be somebody that's flashy, like the banjo stuff, because the banjo stuff was flashy, and people liked that a lot, I said, there's got to be somebody like that, and everybody I asked said, oh, you got to hear Django Reinhardt. And at the same time, I was reading interviews with Jeff Beck, with Chet Atkins, with Doc Watson, with Clarence White, all these guitarists that I admired all refer to Django.
Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, that's what I was going to ask you about, was what was it about Django that drove all, like Chet and people like that, crazy? We'll be right back.